Today on Locked On Red Wings, how much higher can Lucas Raymond soar? We cover him, Erik Gustafsson, and Andrew Copp in part 3 of our player preview series.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. And today we're going to do part 3 of the player previews as we make our way through this roster and try to give you our hopes and expectations of every individual player. And today is another core member of this hockey team, a guy who every single year continues to exceed our expectations and is already, according to Dom Luszczyszyn, Scotty, the 8th best contract in the NHL in Lucas Raymond. We will talk about him first, then we'll talk about Erik Gustafsson in segment 2 and Andrew Copp in segment 3. But before we get to that, I got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Scotty, Lucas Raymond set a new career high in points yet again in the 24-25 season. 80 points, 27 goals, 53 assists, slight dip in his goal totals, but overall increase in his point totals. And just the big concern with him, right, was, new contract, got the big extension, how will he perform? And I think he exceeded our expectations. He's the first Red Wing to hit 80 points in over a decade. Henrik Zetterberg 2011 I think was the last Red Wing to hit 80 points, which is crazy. Larkin was the closest to hit 80 points. He hit 79 2 seasons ago. But Lucas Raymond just continues to be that guy for the Detroit Red Wings. And I think the question here is, when we're talking about our expectations for him this season coming up, our hopes and expectations for him, like how high is that ceiling? How much more can he soar is the question.
It rhymed. How much more can he soar?
Oh, yeah. Poet and I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. Just accidentally. No, I think it's a similar conversation with Cider, right? And we had that conversation on Monday. Is this a situation where year in and year out, we're just going to kind of pencil him in for around a point a game, and that's going to be the ceiling? Or is there kind of another level of, like, this dude could have a point total that is in the 90s or maybe even push 100? I think, points aside, I am the most impressed, honestly, with the defensive side of the puck. I know that sounds weird, but like,
you're right.
We knew that he was going to be a point producer, right? Like we knew, obviously varying, opinions on the extent of how much of a point producer he was going to be, but we've always known that he was going to provide offense for this hockey team. What I didn't expect was for him to be so sound defensively that not only do you have zero issue deploying him in the defensive zone, you can put him on the penalty kill. Now, the penalty kill this year was an absolute train wreck. So mix it up, mix and match. We'll see what happens this year. We'll see where he falls on that side of things. But that's something that right away, like I'm pretty sure on opening night, I remember talking about, wow, Raymond regular season penalty kill minutes. And I think that is the thing that I'm the most impressed with in terms of his development. He had a little bit of a sophomore slump, quote unquote, in terms of offensive production, but you knew that it was in there and you knew that he was going to take that step forward. So the fact that he is both of those things at such a young age, he is a point per game point producer on top of being a sound defensive forward for this team, before his 25th birthday. Like, that is unbelievable. And I think that, do I expect him to be on 100-point score this year? No, but I also don't think he needs to be like this team's best player. If he's again around a point a game and is on power play and penalty kill, that's like that type of player is going to be one of the more valuable ones in the conference.
Yeah, he's a really good player. two-way these days. And that was always going to be the biggest question mark with Lucas Raymond, was can he develop the defensive side of the puck? That was the biggest question mark for the first few years of his career, because he's not small, but he's not overly big either. 5'10", 5'11", not the heaviest guy in the world either. And those first two seasons, it was all about the offensive zone,
What was the
production.
one year that the biggest story in training camp was how much muscle he put on? That was like all anybody talked about. They're like, dude, 12 pounds of muscle, bro.
It might have been Lalonde's second.
I feel like that
Lalonde's
was
second
going
year.
into the season before the one that just finished. Yeah.
Right, where he ended up scoring. I think he bounced back for like 60-something points.
Yeah.
I mean, I have his page up. I can literally read it. So his third season when he had the 31 goals and the 72 assists, and there was the training camp, and Lalonde was talking about how he put on like 8 pounds and stuff, and like people were really excited. And he popped off. He was fantastic. He was the Red Wings' best player down the stretch, and barring, he had that slow start to the season. He was still point per game at the start of the season, just on assists alone, but it took him like 8 or 9 games to get his first goal. Barring that scoring slump, and the slump at the end of the season after the Four Nations tournament, where there were reports that he was fighting through a nagging injury, much like Dylan Larkin was, he still scored 80 points. So I think realistically here, you could say he has a 90-point ceiling. And you said before his 25th birthday, Scotty, he's only 23. He hasn't even his 24th birthday.
Right. I just was picking a round number, but yes.
Right.
Correct.
No, but I'm just emphasizing still even more than that. Like, he's still in that prime development window for a NHL player, and he had 80 points last year with 2 scoring slumps. He is going to be. He has the capabilities and the tools to be a 90-point player. And I want to add to what you were saying too with the defensive side of the game. Right, he came in according to Evolving Hockey. He was a 93 percentile defensive forward, a 93 percentile, top 7% in defensive forwards in the league. His offense was 84 percentile for an overall of 95 percentile. He did not have a single negative attribute about him according to Evolving Hockey. And yeah, he played 59 minutes of penalty kill this season, which is a tick above the average penalty kill to time on the ice according to Evolving Hockey. So he's about a PK2 type guy. Again, I don't know if he has PK future in him, just given the new head coaching and new bodies on the team, but at 5-on-5, he was a positive asset defensively, and he had to be, because with the second line being DeBrincat and Kane, and thankfully with Copp or Casper, there's a little bit of defensive element to that line, but they had to be the top line that was deployed always against the toughest competition, which makes sense because they are the top line, but always in the defensive zone as well, and they performed well in that role. So he's like you said at the beginning, he's like Moritz Seider in that they're already very good and have been worth where they were drafted. And they've already been worth the contracts that you've signed them for in the first.
They've both been worth more than where they were drafted, to be honest.
Yeah, in the first year of their new contract extensions, they were worth it. And, Raymond came in as the 8th best contract in the NHL, according to Dom Luszczyszyn of The Athletic. So it's just the expectation has to be, be a point per game player. Do that again. It's just how much higher can you hope he soars? Right. And I think 90 points is probably appropriate. I think 100 points might be getting greedy, but I think he can get to 85 to 90 points. I really do.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a ridiculous take at all. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that the first month of the season he was only getting assists and not goals, he probably does push 90 at a minimum, if not hit 90. So yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I think if you have a point total that starts with the number 8, you're on power play 1, and you are on again, whether that's penalty kill 2 or just not even on the PK in general, either way, you are in all situations forward that can play both sides of the ice really well and can produce over a point-a-game clip at his best. I think that's unbelievably exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a 30 to 35 goal to 50 to 55 assist type guy. That he's really good at hockey. And he's really good at hockey.
He sure is.
Scotty, let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about Erik Gustafsson and whether or not he can bounce back. And if he does, what role will that be in? Segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings coming up. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You've been using FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open a FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Scotty, Erik Gustafsson had a rough first season with the Detroit Red Wings. Like many of the free agent pickups that Steve Yzerman has acquired over the years, have had rough first seasons with the Red Wings. And he's going into the second year of his contract, coming off a 18-point season with just 2 goals and 16 assists. This is a guy that you brought in to be a power play guy. You kind of replaced Shane Gostisbehere. We've talked about it on end, right? You let Shane Gostisbehere walk out the door. Walk out the door is, I think, frames it a little bit poorly. He wanted more money than the Red Wings were comfortable giving, given the fact that they had big contracts to give out to Raymond and Seider. It's nuance to that. They didn't just let Gostisbehere walk out the door. So they brought Erik Gustafsson in to try and be Gostisbehere light. Be a little bit better defensively. Won't provide some offense. We were thinking, 35 points out of him? He's done it in the past. He hit 60 points at one point in his career, but that was a long time ago. We were hoping for 35 points. Did not hit any of those markers, and it was honestly just as bad, if not worse, as Shane Gostisbehere at 5-on-5, while providing us none of the power play upside. So, Scotty, what are our hopes and expectations of Erik Gustafsson in 25-26?
Well, I think this is another one where hopes and expectations are probably a lot different. I would love, my hope is probably just what we thought our expectations were a year ago at this time, right? We wanted, least we forget, our expectations for him were actually relatively high. And in hindsight, obviously given the year that he put up, that looks ridiculous. But we expected this guy to be a power play 2, obviously with Seider being power play 1, defensive quarterback, but a power play 2 option that was going to produce and be the offensive zone defenseman that Gostisbehere was. Now, we obviously never expected him to produce the same amount of points or the same level of production that Gostisbehere did, but that was the role that we were hoping he would fill. We were like, okay, we're not going to pay Gostisbehere the amount he wants just for him to be a power play defenseman and a third pair guy. So who can we get? Gustafsson is good offensively and is good in the offensive zone, and he's not as much of a black hole defensively as Gostisbehere was. Well, I'm not sure that we got the level of production we were really hoping for. Not that he was ever completely unplayable or anything like that, but at the same time, I think it's certainly fair. Again, maybe this is just us two being stupid, but like a year ago, I think the bar was far higher than what he produced. And now my expectation this year is really just for him to repeat this past season.
I don't think our expectations were too high, to be fair. I mean, yes, he played with better teams the 2 seasons prior, New York and the Leafs, but in the 2 seasons prior, he started the season with the Capitals, finished the year with the Leafs 2 seasons prior, but he had 31 points and I think 42 points the year before that. We were thinking like in 30, 35 range. I don't think that was setting the bar too high. We were using his production on his previous teams as a bar. Now, granted, the Capitals 2 years ago weren't that great. Like let's not confuse the Capitals now with the Capitals 2 years ago, and he was pretty good on that team. So it's just, I don't think our expectations were too high. I think he just fell well short of it. And my expectation for Gustafsson this year is going to be lower, but still not low. I'm expecting him to give 25 points because I don't think what we saw out of Gustafsson in the Lalonde era was Gustafsson. Because, for instance, Scotty, he had 18 points. Remember, he had a career-ending injury around the 60-game mark. He only had 60 games last season. He had only 18 points in that span. 13 of those points, Scotty, came after Todd McClellan joined. After Todd McClellan joined the Detroit Red Wings, he had 13 of his 18 points.
Yeah.
And that was in 30-something games, so almost a half point per game. So he did have a significant uptick in production after Todd McClellan joined the roster. So there's like a Todd McClellan effect on all these players. Like, how will that impact how these guys who underperformed will perform this season? And I think Gustafsson is ripe for a bounce-back year. The problem for me here is, will he still have a role in the second power play unit? I think he will get looks, but with Simon Edvinsson in the final year of his ELC looking to cement himself as a Seider-esque type defenseman, he'll probably want power play minutes. And Seider's got power play unit 1 on lockdown, so there's going to be an internal competition for who's getting the quarterback of power play 2. They may defer to the veteran at the beginning of the season, but if he's not performing well, there's no guarantee he's going to stay there. But if he does perform well, I mean, I don't see why he can't bounce back to 25 points as a power play unit 2 defenseman. I think his 5-on-5 usage will be the exact same as it was last year. I think he's going to be with Justin Holl or Bernard Docker on your third pair and in a pretty sheltered, deployment. But that is what it is. They're your third pair. They're going to get deployed sheltered. It's for me, this is one of the rare cases where for me, for a defenseman, it is about the points. I'm very much like your defenseman need to be able to defend too, but that's just not Gustafsson's game for the most part. So if he can at least offset it with 25 to 30 points, I'll be much happier. And I think that is still a realistic bar for a guy who hit 30 and 40 plus 2 seasons prior to that and had, 60 points at one point in his career. This is not a guy who... He's better than he showed us, and I firmly believe that. And if I'm wrong 2 years in a row, then, well, shame on me, right? That's how it goes. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Fool me, can't get fooled again.
So,
yeah, no, I mean, I think that's fair. I'm taking the other approach where I'm just going to look at what he did last season and go, that's probably just going to be my expectation until proven otherwise. I ultimately, again, like you said, we're talking about a power play 2 and third pair defenseman. That this isn't a major needle mover or a huge impact on the outcome of the season. But I think that, again, man, just given what we haven't seen him in a Red Wings uniform do anything else. And it's not like this is a young up-and-coming player that you're projecting a little bit of development on. I think that it's probably relatively fair to just say it is what it is. And we'll see if that keeps him in the lineup card all year or if he's closer to what you're hoping for and a little bit of a bounce back, because then he definitely will be in the lineup card every night.
Yep. Scotty, let's take another break. When we return, we'll talk about Andrew Copp, another guy kind of very similar to Erik Gustafsson on the very base level of their conversations. I'll explain why on the other side of this break. Before the break, I explained that Erik Gustafsson and Andrew Copp, or I had mentioned rather, Erik Gustafsson and Andrew Copp were similar coming into this season, in that they are both players who were struggling in the early part of the season, but post Derek Lalonde getting fired and Todd McClellan being brought in, really began to thrive. And then both suffered season-ending injuries. Andrew Copp is just like that, and last year was another disappointing season overall for him, 23 points in 56 games played, but under McClellan had a much steadier second half of the year up until his injury as the second line center between Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, really began to kind of be the anchor on that line for the defensive side of things. He's a very good face-off percentage guy as well, the thing that Casper continued to struggle at. He was a rookie. I'm not worried about that yet, but over 50%, just kind of fell in, back into the role that he was brought in initially to do. The question becomes, coming off of that injury, and with the not resurgence, but the ascent of Marco Casper to the 2C role, what are our hopes and expectations of Andrew Copp with the depth chart getting more competitive?
Honestly, super anticlimactic, but I don't expect it to look a whole lot different from what it has the last couple of seasons. I think his deployment is probably going to be heavily defensive. I think that they will. I don't think it'll be as dramatic as the loan was with the shutdown line and everything. I think we talked and dissected that whole thing while Alone was here. I don't think it'll be that, defensive oriented, and we don't expect you to produce literally anything offensively as it was then. But at the same time, this dude has not been a consistent point producer really at any point in his entire Red Wings tenure. Certainly there have been times that have been better than others, but got off to a slow start, then picked it up a little bit in the second half of his first season, and then it's kind of just been up and down ever since. So I don't think that the Red Wings, as an organization, as a coaching staff, as a front office, when viewing and trying to roadmap this season, should pencil Andrew Copp in for whatever, like 50-point season. I think that would be I don't know, foolish. Like you have to find points elsewhere, because I think that he's proven, we have a big enough sample size. I think he's proven that he's not going to be that point producer that he was in his last season in New York. And that's okay, right? The cap went up even, right? It makes the contract not even look as bad as it did originally. I'm not saying that in a super negative, like, this guy sucks connotation. That's not what the point I'm trying to make. I'm just saying I am not going to anticipate him or expect him to produce a lot offensively. I think that he's going to get faceoffs. He's going to be a defensive zone deployment guy, and I think that he will probably excel in that role. He's shown that he can do that well over the last couple of seasons, but I also don't want a guy that I have zero expectations for offensively to be my 2C. So I think that it's probably going to look pretty similar to what it has the last couple of years.
For me, it's really tough to set my expectations for Andrew Copp because I just don't know what his role is going to be. Because the role that he has is going to dramatically shift what I expect out of him. His first season here, he had a 42-point season, only 9 goals, but he was an assist machine for the Detroit Red Wings. And that was the second highest point total he had in his career. I think it was he had the career high in assists that season too. So it's a situation where if they allow him to play a role that has more offensive mindset, I think he can produce more offense. But at the same time, under Lalonde, he was asked to take on and he even spoke about it, he was asked to take on such a defensive-heavy role that it did directly impact the amount of offense he could provide.
For sure.
And he was good in that role. As a defensive center, he is a very good center.
Yeah, agreed.
He is a 73 percentile defenseman, a defender at forward, according to Evolving Hockey. He's going to play on your penalty kill. He did last year. He probably will again this year, especially because he wins faceoffs, and you need that in the defensive zone. But it's just like, what are they going to do about the top-line winger? Because if they don't figure that out, then is Marco Kasper going to go there? Because if that's the case, then they're going to put him on 2C, and I'm going to expect some offense out of him. Because if you're playing with Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, well, yes, it's going to be on you basically to provide any defense for that line as the center. You're playing on such an offensively potent line, getting offensively zone. I mean, Kasper had a ton of points last year after he got promoted. So, I mean, I think that the expectation for him will be to score more points if he's playing 2C. But if they say, hey, Kasper's got this on lockdown and we don't think we want to keep you at center because you're really good defensively and you win a lot of faceoffs. If he's playing a bottom 6 role, well, then, yeah, I'm right there with you, where I think my expectation is that the point total is a little bit lower, but he's going to play on a third-line shutdown line, or a fourth-line shutdown line, which I would, I bristle at the idea of putting Copp on the fourth line as 4C, but if you want to shut down bottom 6 line, I mean, Andrew Copp would be the center for that, don't you think?
Yeah. And again, I mean, to your point, depends on what role he's put in. I can't fathom that they're going to put him in a situation where they are going to have to rely on him to produce offense. Again, like that's just bashing your head against the wall over and over and over again. Like I don't know what else we need to see to be like, okay, you know, if it's a role that we want points to come out of, probably shouldn't be Andrew Copp. And again, that's fine. Like I've accepted what he is. I think most people have. He, as you said, he is objectively a good defensive forward and a good defensive center at that. That is an important role to have on the team, and I'm sure that he will succeed in that role in a bottom six capacity. But I think it would be kind of ridiculous to put him in like a prominent top six role that is going to have to be, even if he is surrounded by two other good offensive players, he like that still means that he's going to have to get points somehow. And I don't know. I think I'm kind of over that.
Well, let me put this on the record too. Is like in my world, it is Marco Kasper on the 2C as 2C and Andrew Copp as 3 or 4C, and neither of them are playing on top line winger. But the problem is because we don't have a solution for top line winger.
Right.
I don't know where he's gonna be. And you know, if he's on the if he's second line center, I wouldn't expect him to be scoring a ton of goals and getting a lot of primary assists. I'd expect it to be a lot more secondary assists. But even so, like just being on a line that gets heavy offensive zone deployments with Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, I would have higher expectations for his point totals. Like, how do you not touch the puck in a sequence that scores goals when you're playing with those two in only offensive zone deployments? So it's just that's just where my mind's at. Andrew Copp, I am like an Andrew Copp defender. Like he's one of those guys where I think he gets a little bit more of a bad rap than he should, because he is effective in plenty of other ways. But I also get the frustration from fans where it's like we signed him for 5.575 or whatever it is, and he doesn't score any goals. So I get that. I think there was a misconception, and maybe we were part of the misconception when we brought him in as to what kind of player he was. But, you know, we can blame...
I don't know if it was a misconception. Like, that can be, you know, on the player too. Like I don't think it was like, oh, like we thought he was going to be something he's just not capable of. Again, he did it literally the year before, the year that he signed with Detroit in New York. He was a pretty solid point producer, had a career high in points that year, and obviously was a good defensive forward as well. So I'm not sure. Like I don't think the Red Wings give him that contract if they don't anticipate him to be more of a point producer than he has ended up being as well, I guess is my point.
Beware the contract year. That's all I'm going to say. Beware the contract year. He had 53 points that year, 39 before that. So 2 pretty solid years in a row, and then 20-point seasons in the 20s, I should say, for pretty much every year before that, which he has now fallen back into. Again, last season, 23 points in just 56 games played because he had the season-ending injury, so he could have finished closer into the 30s again, but that's just the way it fell last year. Anyway, Scotty, any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Friday. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.